This is episode 146. Have you already subscribed to my newsletter? It is very important to me, so all of you subscribe to my newsletter. So go into the description of this show and click on the link, put your email address, and you will get that newsletter roughly once every 2 weeks. And you will not only get notified about new episodes of this podcast, you will also get a priority access to my blogs, articles, some of my predictions. Like in the last newsletter, I put a piece about the seal call in Ireland. I'm predicting that in the coming months, there will be a seal call. So kind of like environmental articles that you might be interested in. And also notifications about the events where you can see me live speaking. And speaking about the events, there's one coming up on the 27th of May in Oxfordshire or Oxfordshire, whatever you want to pronounce that. One way or another, it is called Environmental Debate Live and Unscripted. And it is organized by those lovely folks from the People's Countryside Environmental Debate podcast. So that is live debate. And I am going to talk about whether we can still consume meat while taking into account the environment and welfare of animals. So if you're interested, I am inviting you to this debate. It's 27th of May, so there's still a good time to organize everything. You can buy the tickets by clicking the link that is also in the description of this show and also in the newsletter. So, okay, having this out of the way, today's episode, I am talking with Emanuel Rose. Emanuel is a experienced outdoorsman, fly fisher. He's fishing mainly on the dry fly for anadromous fish, meaning salmon mainly. He's also a hunter, turkey hunter mainly, and also an author. He wrote a series of children's books, and he wrote them for his grandkids. But really, they turned out to be pretty good books. And so, it turned out into a business for him, I guess. So we talk about this as well. But the main thrust of the episode is multi-generational outdoors teaching, meaning how to get kids outdoors, how to get them interested in nature. And, like if you're interested in something, then you will protect that something that you're interested in and love. So to ensure the future of nature, conservation, and also outdoor pursuits like hunting and fishing, we need to educate young generation, next generation, kids, children's, and this is what Emanuel does through his books. So in the episode, we started talking a little bit about the hunting and fishing and the realities, how does it look like on the other side of the pond in the US. Emanuel is based in South Oregon, North California. And then from there, we transition into talking about his books and his motivation and, like why kids are not spending as much time as they used to in the outdoors. There are many reasons for that, and we touched on most of them. So that's the episode. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And once you're done and you did enjoy it, leave me 5-star rating, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple. Give me 5-star rating. This is great help for me and for the show. Okay, so that's it for the introduction. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Emanuel Rose. Emanuel, welcome to the show. Good to hear you and good to see you.
Thanks so much, Tommy. I'm excited to be here and talk to you today.
We had this exchange before we started recording the podcast, and you talked about the multi-generational outdoors teaching. That's a subject that is very interesting to me and a lot of listeners. We spoke many times on the podcast about the importance of, getting children into the outdoors and educated about all that. So we're going to talk about this. But before that, I would like you to give us a little bit of a, introduction to yourself. What's your background? You're a angler, you're a hunter, but I just would like to hear it from you. So I guess what's your story? That's how they say it in the US.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, what's your story?
Yeah, that's a funny thing. I'm gonna digress here, but that's a funny thing that I'm not a native speaker, obviously, as my listeners know it, as you know. And like in the US, it's perfectly normal to say like, what's your story as an invitation to talk about yourself. while in Europe or in the UK, like, what's your story? It's something that you're going to hear from the policeman at the scene of an accident.
Right.
Like, all right, what's your story? So anyway, I digressed.
Yeah, no problem. Let's see. My family is from Central California, so near Yosemite, and so that's where I was about 2 hours away from Yosemite, and I got to grow up trout fishing in all that area, and but my family very orthodox. We call it orthodox fly fishermen. Um, we dry fly only, fly fishermen, and then we definitely we turkey hunted and rabbit hunted and deer hunted, a little bit of bird hunting, and ran German shorthair pointers for a while while I was growing up, and um, and then when I got done with high school, then I moved to Humboldt County, which is a very northern part of California, so I could go and try to catch some steelhead and go after the anadromous fish. And yeah, and so then we've been all over the world fly fishing, and
Oh, really?
yeah, just
Yeah. Okay. So you're really deep into that.
yeah.
What was your like a biggest or most memorable trip?
Well, the trip to New Zealand, everybody should go there at least once, right? To go and experience just the massive fish taking dry flies in crystal clear water. So
So I guess you're Orthodox fisherman yourself as well.
yeah,
You didn't.
I still, I have learned how to spay fish. That was something that we didn't have when I was growing up, but it's been a real treat to learn how to do that on the Deschutes River and Rogue River, those bigger western rivers. You need a little more reach.
Okay.
Yeah. And now I run a Springer Spaniel, and so bird hunting in the fall and steelhead fishing in the winter. So that's
That sounds pretty good to me. That's and have you been fly fishing for any of the tropical fish for the pompanos or GTs or these sort of
yeah. I did a trip down to Belize and did that program for the bonefish and baby tarpon and those sorts of fish. Which
okay.
it's fun and it's nice to be in a tropical location and occasionally have a Cuban cigar and catch those bonefish are amazing.
But there's like a steelhead, a salmon fishing. That is the main thing. That is the main appeal to you.
Yeah, that was I actually did a little documentary movie about it, about steelhead fishing called "The Treasure is Steelhead." That was my take on it, and it was a long adventure to be able to actually catch the first one because it can be complicated.
Yeah, yeah. Especially that you're very specific about the method you're using.
Right? Yeah.
So you're not gonna compromise just to get the fish.
Just swinging flies. That's right. Down and across.
That's a man. Listen, Emmanuel. So while we have this subject, I'm really curious because you are obviously deep into that. How does the situation of anadromous fish, salmon, steelhead, also looks like in terms of the returns, in terms of the population dynamic? Is it looking bleak? Is it decreasing? Is it increasing? Like how's that looks from your perspective?
I really try to be a glasses half full guy, and it's something that obviously it's deep in my soul. These fish, but we're at a delicate crossroads where the fish are not in good shape, the habitat's not in good shape, and I think there's ocean conditions that we don't know about that are also not in good shape. These fish are unbelievable in that they'll swim from the west coast of the United States and then end up all the way to Japan and Bering Sea and Russia. I mean, the range is inconceivable for me. And so there's a lot of threats between where they're spawned and going out and coming back. So, but yeah, in general, it's not a good situation. I don't know that there's any solutions that will happen, that aren't 100-year solutions.
Yeah. And among your fishing buddies or people who you know, what is the prevailing opinion about the causes of it? Is there a one that most often people point out to, or maybe the one that you think is the main one?
I think really depends on the watershed. For instance, on the Deschutes River, they have they have a number of dams on the Deschutes River, and um, so their goal was to draw salmon above these dams, and so they were trying to mix the water in a certain way, so that because there's a number of tributaries that push water into the lakes. The way they mixed the water, they were pushing hot water down the Deschutes River Valley, and so that hot water had two unintended consequences. One was that it caused the hatches to come off at weird times, and sometimes all the bugs would hatch all in the same period, and so that then made it difficult for the smolts to survive and exit and escape. So on that river, that was purely avoidable activity by humans, based on some other desire that they had that resulted. Basically, they killed an entire run of fish in order to send 75 fish above the dam. That was one of the counts. And so it's complicated, like you've talked about on other episodes, where the politics of this, it's not like we can just say, hey, this is what makes sense and let's go do it. There's lots of forces that are pushing into to make bad decisions. So you got a tribe involved, you got the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, you got electricity production, and Corps of Engineers, and blah blah blah. So all the alphabet agencies. But the sum total is that they killed the Deschutes River steelhead by mixing the water and pushing hot water down the river. Simple as that. The other ones, there's lots of great examples now of the habitat loss that's being restored. So the damming, which looked good 100 years ago, we know was not so good for the anadromous fish. And so as they take dams out, like on the Elwha River, on the Sandy River, in Washington and Oregon, the fish come back very quickly and start to rehabitate with that new habitat available. So
And is there any issues with predation with their seals or like killer whales or something? That I heard that I think maybe less seals. I don't know. I'm just asking
yeah,
because that's I'm obviously my questions are targeted because there's a lot of conversation here where I live in Ireland and Northern Ireland, Scotland. About the impacts of seals
yeah,
and the predation, and so obviously this is another complicated subject because obviously those seals are also in decline, and it's like a matter of they're competing for shrinking resource, which is not only salmon but also the trawling is still going on within the 6 nautical miles of the shore,
yep,
so you have a less sprat, less sand deal, less everything, and it's just like the walls are closing in, and then they're like, oh, let's shoot some seals to save a salmon. It's like, oh, okay, it's probably not the first choice. So that's what I'm asking, how the predation situation looks like in your part of the world.
yeah. There's definitely. I think part of it is because they're federally protected animals. So they used to be predated on by humans hunting seals, right? And now that's out of balance. I guess it's kind of like the reintroduction of the wolf. Um, you know, uh, there's there's some states where it's still legal to hunt wolves, and some states where it's not. If they run without any apex predator above them, then it causes problems on a shrinking resource. And I think ultimately that's the challenge we have is a rational management program that takes the hunter and the animals into consideration. Because there's kind of that split. There's like the Audubon Society kind of wilderness people who just won't think it should all just go back to how it was 300 years ago, but without hunting. And then there's the hunting community, which is like, yeah, we'd love for it to go back to 300 years ago, but we'd like to be able to take some animals occasionally, and we don't want to have to not kill the apex predators because they're killing a lot of the animals we want to go and hunt.
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating how the like a setup is different in the Europe and then the US, but ultimately the human attitudes are the same, and it's like it boils down like again the same kind of like a mindset of groups and people. So it's fascinating to me. Listen, and when it comes to hunting, you mentioned turkey hunting. Are you doing like big game hunting as well?
I haven't in a long time. My focus is the birds.
Okay.
So all the upland species and then the turkeys. I run a Springer Spaniel, so I got to keep him focused.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you explain for the benefit of our listeners, because I'm sure many haven't heard about how does the turkey hunt look like, and I mainly would like you to explain the difficulty of it, why it's so difficult, because I think that a lot of listeners might won't be able to put like a clear picture of how the turkey hunting looks like and why it's difficult. It's like, oh, I mean, it's like a big chicken.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think turkey hunting. If you're somebody who enjoys hunting, turkey hunting is one of the high art forms in that um, you you got to locate the birds, and so there's two general styles. One is to locate the birds the night before and then go set up near them, and then call to them in the morning from the roost. Or the other style, which is also fun, which is to just run and gun, and basically that means you're walking, you're covering 7 to 15 miles a day, and hitting call occasionally to see if you can locate them, and then setting up very quickly to then call them in. So it just depends on what style you like. I mean, the turkeys in the spring are, they're coming out of not actual hibernation, but a quiet time of the year. They've been conserving energy all winter. They're coming out ready to breed, and so the toms or the males are fighting over the hens, fighting for the hens, and so to be able to set up a decoy, a hen and a jake, a young tom, and then be able to call and have the turkey come in and strut is quite a scene. But a lot of times they have really good eyesight, so that's the challenge with the turkey. Is this some of my buddies think that just moving your eyes left to right is enough for it to spook a turkey. so
Oh man.
so I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not an ophthalmologist, but I do know that they have very good eyesight, and it doesn't take much to spook them. So,
Yeah. Can you explain for the listeners Tom and Jake and also gobbler? What does it mean?
yeah. So the toms are the mature birds, and the jakes are the 1 year old or less males, and then the gobbler is just named after what it sounds like when they're calling, and it's the male turkey also.
Yeah, there are also like long beards. Is that as well the name?
Yeah, so that's one of the ways that you can distinguish the you can sex them is by the beard, and then the beard grows over time. Um,
So these are like a reduced feathers that goes under like under the neck, under the chest of the bird.
it's more like I don't know exactly, but it's more like it's kind of like horsehair. Horse tail. So it's coarse hair.
Okay.
And it grows over time.
Gotcha. Okay, so that we covered for people who were not aware, didn't know what's up with the turkey and turkey hunts. Now we know. Emmanuel, listen. So that's a hell of an introduction. You're a pretty much hardcore outdoorsman, dry fly, turkey hunting. Listen, man. So let's talk about the multi generational outdoors teaching. Um, I want to hear it from you. How, like, what do you understand by this, and why this is important? Why you decided that this is something that you want to do something about?
The experience of being out with my dad, my uncles, my grandfather, um, in in a fishing camp or in a hunting camp, um, being with them in places where they could be the most relaxed, right? So that to hear the stories, also then of what it was like, 50 years before that, or um, so there's that kind of the culture of the family that was set up different, being in camp on those trips, being instructed how to do things, and kind of some of it was uh, positive and easy, and some of it was hard to learn. You get my grandfather was a tough taskmaster kind of guy, and there's a certain way to do everything. Uncles were different and more nurturing, but there was the culture of the family, and then there was my experience of being out there, right, and that closeness to uh, sitting on a rock with a gun waiting for a deer to come by, but hearing the wind in the trees and hearing a creek in the background and watching the squirrels move around and having time where I was just sitting there, nothing to do, right? Um, that it fills out the fullness of being a human in a way that you can't instruct or create in any other way.
That's an important thing you just said there. Sitting there having nothing else to do. I think like this is well established now, and there's a lot of like a good peer reviewed science that this actually messes with our brains, that we don't have this downtime. We just we can reach to our pocket and get entertained,
Yeah,
and we just ended up being entertained all the time, and that's ain't good to our brains.
no, it's not. It's not good, and we're seeing that as part of the negative outgrowth from the lockdowns from the pandemic, and this whole Generation Z that's grown up with not knowing the world without the internet, without smartphones, right? There's, like you're saying, a lot of brain chemistry that gets changed, um, and the dopamine rush and all those things. So um, I'd say the happiest times that I spent with my dad and my uncles and my grandfather, were on those trips, or preparing for those trips, or tying flies, or casting a new rod in the front yard after Sunday dinner, where there's just um, a space for conversation, that where everybody was relaxed and focused on the same thing, and it was supportive and nurturing from their perspective, and then like I said, from perspective of being supported from nature.
And you obviously think, I don't want to put the words in your mouth, but do you think that youth today doesn't have that? And why is so? Is it because there are not many uncles and fathers and grandfathers left who are still hunt and fish, or is it like the kids are just not interested? How do you see that?
Yeah, no, I think the kids are interested, and that's what I've seen. Is that, I mean, you could take, and I have done this, where you take hardcore inner city kids who've never seen the snow, and you take them on a 2 hour drive out of town, and you take them to the snow, and they're just amazed, and you could just see the worry and the stress melt off of them, right? Of being fascinated and excited and playful. Um, so yeah, I think the part the part of the human being is still in the kids, right? But I do think it is a challenge in that these outdoor pursuits do take a considerable amount of experience and gear and knowledge and um, knowing where to go and what the rules and laws are, even just to go camping without that's not in the campground, right? Like there's a whole set of concerns that if you don't grow up in that kind of family, you have to have a mentor in order to do it. And even like, for instance, the turkey hunting, I didn't ever go turkey hunting with my family, but I've got mentors who are taking me who are showing me how to do it. And otherwise, it'd be very difficult for me to just look at a YouTube video and then go. You can't learn a lot of these things in those ways. It takes human to human contact.
Well, and the other thing is that you really need to you you got to have this want in you to learn and do that. And there's often that it's hard to expect that people, kids, young people will put an effort to learn something and explore something they don't even know exists.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so that's and so is that part of your mission to spread that knowledge, to have that information that, oh, look at these things is out there. You wrote the kids books, I think more than the one, looking at the at your website. Is that the is that your motivation behind those?
Yeah, the idea that we have to trigger people into thinking and questioning about these bigger topics. So this current book, When All Henry Seeds to a Tree, is about forest fire and about what to do basically afterwards. And so the book comes with dug for seeds so that the kids can read the book with the parents, and then they can go and have an activity to do also. Um, but that the motivation was to influence my grandson and granddaughters, and um, and then I got enough support that said, hey, maybe this has got some value to some other people too.
You know, I agree. I like we said in the leading up to the show, and my regular listeners already know that story, that I started hunting kind of like a late in life. And you know, because I was an angler, I kind of knew about all these things going on, and I had this drive to learn and find things. But I figured there is a lot of people who would like to, you know, harvest meat for the freezer or whatever, and they don't know where to start. You know, they don't have relatives that are living in the village or in the rural areas, and you know, they're maybe 30 something, and like, oh, where do I start? So I wrote this guide for, you know, how to get started in deer hunting in Ireland. And you wouldn't believe the response to that. Like, so how so many people who go is like, oh man, this is exactly what I was looking for. Like nobody laid it out, you know, step by step what I need. And you know, you need the gun permit, you need this and that gun, and you need the, you know, license, and this is how you find the land to hunt, and these are the rules, and like, and at least here, and I think that in general, there's not many this sort of information available to people. And what I found is that the hunting organizations, they are, you know, they already have a, you know, all their hunter buddies are there. So they're kind of like assuming we already know that. And there's like a zero outreach to recruit new hunters. There's you know, they offer you a training for, you know, if you want to become a hunter, so they're gonna, you know, train you and give you an exam, but there's nothing of like, hey, this is how, you know, like before you get to the point that you want to actually go to the training and pass the exam, there's a hell lot of stuff that leads into that
Yes.
before, right? And there's nothing, there's zero about that. And so I found this was kind of interesting exercise, and you know, it allowed me to share what I learned, and you know, how to come over the obstacles. But also there's a lot of people interested in that, so I totally understand where you're coming from with your ideas.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's always a fine line of bringing in new hunters, right? And I think that's the challenge is, um, at least here in the States, the guys will take any kid hunting and never think twice about it. Like we're happy to mentor, but if it's another man, you're like, that guy's going to steal my spot. He's going to take the landowner away from me. And, there's that tribal, competition that kicks in. So, it is kind of a sticky wicket in that respect.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, this is kind of like a almost catch 22, right? Because if you're not inviting more people, then there's a less and less hunters, and their collective, you know, let's call it power, or influence over policy is less and less. So my personal view is on that is like, if we need more hunters, and if it yeah, and again, this is like a specificity. Every location is different. In the US, probably every state is different. Yet alone, comparing, Ireland or the UK with United States. But I think that overall, the number of hunters are dropping dramatically across the world, and the average age is probably pushing 50 at this point. And I just we just recorded an episode about the future of hunting. I was like, if we don't have like more people and younger people that in 20, 30 years, we might not have an opportunity for hunting. You feel the same about these things?
Yeah, let's see. I think it's hard to picture that in America that there wouldn't be hunting. Um, but yeah, and I know we need to continue to recruit and train and mentor hunters. I'm definitely feel that, and I think it's kind of like the bird hunting that I do. I do it 80% for the dog because it's so fun for me to watch him. Right, like the hunting and the killing is not as important to me as being outside, going for a walk, taking the dog, seeing what his capacity is. And of course, I love to shoot the shotgun. I love to eat pheasant or tucker, and but it's just the completeness of it, of uh, the hunter's moon in October, and seeing that rise over the ridge, and um, feeling the connection with humans and animals who've been hunting for the millennia. In that same time period, seeing that same moon, there's no replacing those peak feelings. And
Yeah, yeah. How many books have you written overall?
but I've got 7 children's books, and
Hmm. Oh, by the way, we're gonna put the links in the description of the show, so people who are listening to that, just go into the description of the show, click the links, everything is there.
thank you. And then I've got a coloring book that goes with that one too, so that way they got something to do as well. And then I have written a couple of books on marketing as well. So, but
Okay, so you wrote a lot of books. You have quite an experience in the
I think,
writing business, let's
well,
say.
we're at a time, and I think you're doing it also, which is you're providing leadership for people, and we're in a time when people need and are looking for grounded leadership that's connecting them to being human and connecting them to other humans. So I appreciate
Mm.
what you're doing, Tommy.
Thank you. Appreciated what you're doing. This is like I said. I feel this is important to outreach that hand to kids, and give them the opportunity to like you're not the first one where we talk about books, and we're not the first one but talk about kids books in this podcast. And is your goal, is your ultimate goal with those books, is like, maybe it's a different question, like, what is your ultimate goal, like, what is the picture perfect outcome of someone buying that book for their kids?
Yeah. My ultimate goal, I can answer both those questions because the ultimate goal was for me to mentor Henry, who's my grandson, from long distance, right? So we live about 6.5 hours away, so I can only see him as frequently as most people would do that, a few times a year. And um, I wanted to trigger his imagination, but also teach him things. And so the way that I wrote the books um, are accurate in terms of sometimes there's Latin words in there to name a tree, or the track will be an actual track of what a Feliz con color, the mountain lion looks like. Or I'll note that the grouse are standing still, and that's their way of defense. So there's the natural history part of that. That was one of the foundations, um, and I wanted to teach him that, and I wanted to teach him uh, about good manners and being ethical and listening to his parents, and so that's written into the story. And then I wanted to trigger his imagination and to see what it would feel like to fly around the world like a red-tailed hawk, and what he would see from those perspectives, and expand his view of the world. So that was really that was just the purest form of saying, wow, if I could tell him three things, these are the things. And that's what I want to tell him a lot.
Gotcha, gotcha. And how does that transformed from something that was, catered for your grandson into, let's go with the to the wider waters with these things? What was the, either thought process or maybe what happened that you made that decision?
Well, it had been a number of conversations with Susan, my partner, and I want to do this, I want to do this, how we talk about things. And then um, I hadn't really done much around it. And then I was sitting on the Winaha River in northeastern Oregon after a day of turkey hunting, and I was tired and just sitting there having a soda and looking at this little wall that is probably 150 feet tall, and it was mosaic in the coloration of it, and um, there was a big Doug fir tree growing out of it, and a hawk that was in and out of that tree, and it just all kind of in the sound of the river and this kind of tired meditative sitting doing nothing. The wall to me started to take on the visual of the Klimt painting, The Kiss. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So anyway, it's this very mosaic piece that's not very distinct, and so it just triggered that, and then it all just kind of came together. The Winaha River and Henry and the red-tailed hawk, and I'm like, all right, well that's the motif, that's the story. And then as soon as I got back from that trip, then I started the process of meditating very first thing in the morning, and then sitting down at a computer and working to generate these stories. And um, and then as I got to a spot where I didn't know enough to be able to do it any better, then I hired a children's book consultant, an author's consultant, and I got some help. Uh, and then I hired an illustrator, and then put it through the process to actually get the book together in a form that's valuable.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. So I presume that you got a pretty good feedback since it's sponsored for so many other books as now.
Yeah, and then I'm involved with a summer camp down in Central California that's also near Yosemite, and it's called Camp Jack Hazard, and it's a camp where I worked at a camp when I was younger, and it's a wilderness camp that takes every kid backpacking for 3 days and 2 nights. So it really provides the kind of experience we've been talking about, where kids get a chance to enjoy uh, enjoy being outside in an untethered manner, but still safe. So they're talking about using it as part of the summer program too, which I'd never even considered. Right. So there's all kinds of fun things that happen as you put out a creation like this, and people see it in ways that they can use it also.
This is probably the best thing any author or creator can think about. Starting something small and then like a genuine need, and then other people seeing a value in it. That I think that must be tremendously satisfying.
Yeah, it is. It's rewarding, and I think if it could be as long lasting as some of those other things, like from Shel Silverstein or A. Milne. That's what I'm looking to create, is something like the Giving Tree, or Winnie the Pooh, or something um, where there's this multi generational but forward multi generational attachment to these stories, because they trigger enough different dimensions of the human in the people who are reading them. And I've got them written in a way that I think also it teaches the parents some things, and so it's kind of fulfilling for everybody to get bits and pieces out of it.
Yeah, well, man, I think this is you hit the nail on the head here, like teaching parents as well, kind of like, because otherwise you wouldn't need to teach those kids about those things, right? Because they would get it from their parents. Like, why do you think this is happening? Like, what are the um changes? Is it like in the general move into more technology involved in every day, that this is causing that we're basically losing those skills, we're losing that connection, right? Because this is like, in fairness, this is why you wrote the books. This is because you feel like we're losing something. You felt like your grandson is not gonna get something that he would get should he was born, I don't know, 30, 40 years earlier, like yourself. Why you like what are the reasons for that? Do you feel there are something that we can control, or is it just
Well,
unavoidable at this stage?
I think it's a great question. What I understand about history is that we as humans are not that much different than people 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years ago, right? We're always looking for uh,
And anatomically modern humans.
right, and we're just looking for survival, right? And as long as we're in a psychology of survival, and not reviewing the fact that we're safe, and not really embracing the fact that um, we have the time and the energy to look deeper into what it is to be a human, then we're going to be always clawing for a bigger house, a nicer car, fancier pair of shoes, right? But that's not new. We've been dealing with that for 10,000 years, of this small ego being gratified. Um, so it's always been a small portion of a culture that can look inward and look for deeper meaning in the world. Um, I think the challenge is that there's so many of us, and that we um, have the ability to adapt because of technology at such a faster rate, and destroy things so much quicker. I think that's the big trigger, or the big difference that I see. But the humans are the same, right? In that, I believe. Um, so it's if I had the magic wand, I would wish an hour of meditation on everybody every day, right? That would change the world. Um, and then if I had a second wish, it would be that they were able to go and say, how can I change today, instead of how can I change everybody else today? So those two things would be my magic wand.
Yeah, you're jumping ahead of me actually, because I usually ask the question along this sort, like, like if you could do one thing, or if you can wave the magic wand, and there you go, you just came out yourself with this. I totally agree, man. I totally agree with both of those points. And do you think that the role, the, maybe I should rephrase the question and ask, like, do you think that the fact that we're losing nature, and that nature is getting deteriorated, and there's a less and less and less, plays a role into that as well? Or do you feel like this is other way around, and we losing nature because we don't have this, enough people who would appreciate it being there intrinsically, just for being there, not necessarily for timber or this or that or something else.
Yeah, I think it definitely it is we're replicating our internal feelings as a archetypally externally, right? Is what it looks like to me that um, we 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 have this desire to control and dominate um, in order to feel safe. And again, it's not new. It's not anything that it's just, and it's not just the Europeans who did this, or this has been all cultures. So it's just about how those of us who have a little bit of insight into it and have experienced some of this um, deeper meaning can continue to have these conversations and mentor people to have them with us.
100%. I totally agree with you. Listen, how do you see, so this is my another question that you already sorted out the magic wand one. So my other classic question, like, the regular listeners already know what's coming. How do you see the future playing out? And take a future horizon, whatever you want, 5 years, 10 years, 30, 50, 100 years. How do you see nature? Like, do you think that we're gonna eventually lose all of it, or do you think that we're gonna eventually wake up and try to preserve what's left, or maybe even restore some of it? And like, how do you see that coming, and following on from that, do you feel like activities like hunting and fishing still be around, or for all the reasons that we already mentioned, including dwindling social acceptance of the activities, which we probably didn't mention, that we're gonna lose it or not? So how you see the future playing out for nature and for the outdoor pursuits?
Yeah, well, I know how I'd like to see it happen, and I have a lot of hope for the restoration. And I think there's two really amazing projects that give me hope. One is the ocean cleanup project where they're taking care of the garbage patch, and those guys are doing amazing things. A young man, I think he was from the Netherlands, who created the idea, and he's had tons and tons of support now. And they're making great progress in cleaning up the plastics in the Great Garbage Patch, and then also from the rivers that are the sources of that plastic. So that I think gives me some of the greatest hope that I've had in a long time. The other is the use of drones to reseed forest lands, and
Oh, really? I
companies
haven't heard about
like
that.
Drone Seed and some other companies like that. Um, so they're using the GIS technology, the mapping with the drones, and able to reseed burns and clear cuts. And so, I, you know, every tool that a human has created can be used for good or bad, right? All the way back from the rock. You could use it to break apart a tree for fire. You could use it to bash somebody on the head. So these tools of technology ultimately could be our freedom and give us more time to hunt and fish, right? Um, if we can continue to funnel and use them correctly, I think the desire to be part of that process internally, to the hunter, is so deeply buried in us that we're never gonna lose that. You know, it has to happen. Um, it can be just like the warrior energy, right? That's so deeply part of humans. Um, we can sublimate it. We can have it show itself in other ways, but I mean, this. There's nothing better than the night before getting all your gear together and organized and thinking about what's going to happen and checking the weather and going back and thinking about all the times you've been to that spot, recounting your experiences, and then not being able to sleep all night, and then getting up early, and then going and discovering the mystery of what's going to unfold in that day. And that desire cannot be beat out of us by any technology or any situation. That creative desire to go and experience what's going to unfold. Right, that's the magic.
I agree, Emmanuel. I agree 100%. Listen, tell us how to get in touch with you, how to get your books, everything that people needed to know about it.
It's wenahahenry.com, and it's WENAAJ Henry.com.
And links in the description. Reminder, folks, just go into the description. You'll have the links there. You can just click.
Yeah, and then from there, that's all the information is there, and I appreciate the conversation, Tommy, and thanks for the great questions and having this platform.
Emmanuel, it was a pleasure. I wish you all the best, and you gave us some really interesting perspective. So I also appreciate you. So thank you.
Cheers.